It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us. Our guest, Kevin DeLeon, he is a member of the California State Senate. And sir, there's been a lot of attention paid to the passage of Prop 30, which increased taxes on the wealthy, increased taxes, sales tax for Californians. But there was another tax initiative, Prop 39. It didn't get as much attention, but really changes the way some funding is done in California. Talk to us about it.
That's correct. Prop 39, I was a co-chair along with Tom Steyer and former Secretary of State George Shultz.
Sure.
What it did and what it will do is close a corporate tax loophole, an egregious corporate tax loophole that benefited out-of-state corporations to the detriment of individual taxpayers in California as well as California businesses. So it's a good thing for the Californians.
And California was one of few states that had this loophole that allowed
correct.
Corporations to pick their taxing formula. And so the argument went that they would pick a formula that was more beneficial, especially for those that were out-of-state corporations, and it was to the detriment of California.
Well, like you said, it was to the detriment of California businesses. If you had a competitor and they were from out of state, say Texas, New York, New Jersey, they get to pay less taxes. And it put Californians in our schools at a decided disadvantage. So this is a good thing for California because no taxes are raised on individual taxpayers or California businesses.
And so under Prop 39's formula, the money, though, is dedicated to energy efficiency. Is that correct?
What we're going to do is we're going to take, it's about $1 billion a year. We're going to take $500 million, invest that into our public schools and the general fund. The other $500 million, we're going to invest in energy efficiency for creation of jobs here in California for Californians. That will sunset in 5 years.
And let's talk about the school side, because under Governor Brown's budget, he has dedicated about $400 million to energy efficiency in K-12 schools.
Well, I applaud the governor's vision. We're on the same page with regards to dedicating that money for our public schools throughout the state of California. If we can, in fact, realize jobs, invest the money for the retrofits, energy efficiency retrofits, and take those cost savings and capture those savings, invest it back into the classroom. If you need more counselors, if you need more nurses, if kids in the disadvantaged neighborhood need more math, more reading skills, then you can have after-school programs.
I've been to some schools that have already gone solar. It's quite remarkable to see these solar cells on the tops of these schools. And what was inspiring to me was that oftentimes the school would generate too much solar energy so they could sell it back to the grid in some communities and realize those funding benefits.
With solar programs, you can do that. You can put it back into the grid. You can sell it. You know, you're generating energy in this case. On energy efficiency, it's low-hanging fruit. So we're talking about some simple things. We can talk about HVAC. We're talking about lighting.
So it's not solar per se?
That's not solar per se. It is energy efficiency and renewable, which would include solar as well too.
So what's happening with the other pot? You mentioned about half deals with energy efficiency for K-12. Then there's the other half.
What we want to do with the other half, so we want to put that other half back into our schools because our schools have been cut. They've been very devastating, draconian cuts the past few years because of the budget deficit. There's roughly about $8 billion that are owed our public schools because of deferral in payments. We want to make sure we continue to pay back to schools so they get dollar for dollar so they can reinvest it back into the classroom. It's very, very important.
So where do we stand now? I understand you're holding some hearings throughout the state.
Sure.
The purpose of the hearings is what exactly?
We held hearings in San Jose, California, in San Diego. We'll be holding hearings in Los Angeles. The purpose of the hearings is to get the feedback from superintendents, from principals, from folks who are environmentalists, from folks who've been unemployed. We want to get everyone's perspective because we want to make sure that we spend the money wisely and intelligently. I think that
there is discretion.
There is discretion. We have an amazing opportunity to restore a modicum of faith in the taxpayers in government. We want to make sure that we have this amount of money and we invest it wisely and we actually realize real jobs.
So we know, as we said, Prop 39 passed, gives $1 billion to the state focused on energy programs, education. Prop 30, that money is dedicated in large part also to education. Are we clear that those dollars will go to education? Because by design, there was no lockbox put on Prop 30.
The governor campaigned up and down the state of California and staked out his reputation on the passage of Prop 30. I have all faith in the governor. We'll work with him in a partnership to make sure that those dollars are spent, in fact, in our public schools. You know, he put a lot on the line. He put his credibility on the line to make sure we got Prop 30 passed. If Prop 30 did not pass, the state of our schools today would be probably the worst ever in the history of the state of California.
I have to ask you a question just between us. I was sure Prop 30 would fail. I mean, I've said that on the air. What did you think?
It was on the ropes.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, Prop 30, to put this in context,
please.
In the past, since 1992, we've had 22 attempts to pass revenue measures at the ballot box. 18 of them have failed. Only 5 of them.
And the last one that passed was 2004.
That is correct.
And what I remember is there was a cigarette tax initiative on the June ballot. I mean, this is California, not North Carolina, and that failed.
That failed just by
but still,
a smidgen, yeah.
I mean, if we couldn't pass a cigarette tax, who would have thunk we'd pass with over 55% sales tax on everyone?
So it sort of kind of breaks the stereotype that there's a lot of taxes that are increased in the state of California. You've only had 5 measures in the past 20 years that have actually have passed. Tobacco tax, the governor's Prop 30, and of course Prop 39.
Let me ask you about taxes, because it was a good night for Democrats in November, especially in California. You now hold a 2/3 supermajority in the Senate, 2/3 supermajority in the Assembly. You rule the roost. I mean, you basically can do anything you want. Where do you go with this newfound power? And I don't say that pejoratively, but where do you go with these new supermajorities?
I think that we want to be judicious, that we'll be restrained in how we approach, public policy that helps improve the human condition. Number one, we want to create jobs. We have to have economic growth, because that's the most organic way to create revenues that comes into the general funds to help fund schools, to help fund programs for senior citizens who have Alzheimer's. We have to create job growth in California.
At the same time, we know that you have a lot of partners who helped you get to that 2/3 majority. And I'm sure those partners will say, now's the time, it's payback time. And again, not pejorative, it's payback time. We need your votes on restoring social service cuts, restoring money to education. The governor's budget, we didn't see a lot of restoration of dollars. We saw kind of
a continued plan of austerity.
Exactly. So how do you fight that off, if that's your goal?
Well, I think what we have to do, again, is be judicious. We have to look at what grows revenue in California, job growth. So we want to create the conditions for job creation in the state of California. And for programs like education, higher education, we need to invest dollars, because those will be the job creators in the future. Those will be the individuals who create revenue in the future, who will help sustain the tax base in California.
For example, your friends on the Republican side have proposed a bill, for example, that would freeze tuition at UC and CSU for 7 years. Feels good inside. Yes. Is that the approach?
I think that we have to figure out, more creative ways. By freezing tuition, then you have to figure out how are you going to offset other cuts that the University of California may have to encounter. We want to freeze tuition. We want to make sure that college is affordable to all students, regardless of who they are and where they come from. But we have to be smart in how we go about doing it.
And along those lines, how do you, or do you include your Republican colleagues in the general discussion?
I think they're part of, but I think they're part of the discussion. Their perspective is important. We have a real diversity of opinion across the board, even among Democrats, and obviously as well as with Republicans. But I think everyone's voice should be heard.
And so are you working today, for example, with, there's only 11 Republican senators. I was speaking with Carol Liu a few weeks ago, State Senator Carol Liu, and she said she looked across the aisle. She thought, where are all the Republicans? Where'd they go?
The world has changed dramatically in California. The demographics have changed dramatically. The Democrats are obviously in the driver's seat. We need to be fiscally responsible. We need to be fiscally responsible. But at the same time, we need to grow our economy. But we have to invest in the future for job creation. That means investing in education. That means investing in technologies that are going to create more jobs. That means investing in higher education. We got to make sure that these kids have a real opportunity to go to UCLA or Cal State LA or any other university in California if they're going to be job creators.
His name is Kevin DeLeon. He's a member of the California State Senate. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. Welcome to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Anthony Cannella, member of the California State Senate, and one of fewer Republicans than he was last year. There were 15 California State Senators in the last session. Now there's 11 out of 40. Talk to us about that math.
Well, we clearly lost a few seats the last election, and we're working hard to get our message out there and let people know what we stand for. And because I think we have a message, quite frankly, that resonates with the people of California. I think that they're for being fiscally conservative, and so we're going to preach that message. I will preach that message.
And you know what? I agree with you. I agree with you. I think Californians fundamentally are fiscally conservative. And they've shown that through ballot initiatives. And they hadn't passed a statewide tax initiative since 2004. Then Prop 30 came. Right. But what is it then? I mean, this is the state of Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon. I mean, this is a state that has given the nation some great Republicans, but in November, it was just an avalanche for the Democrats.
Yeah, I think it was. And I think, again, we have to be careful with our messages. I think that sometimes our message is construed as, anti-Hispanic, anti-gay. It's, the college students, they feel like we're not there for them. And so I would say that those are all wrong, and I think that we need to be better articulating our message.
So what do you do? And I really ask you specifically because you are one of few Republicans that represents a district that is clearly Democratic, and yet you've done well in these districts. You're also known as someone who's a moderate Republican, some would argue a dying breed, but maybe not. What do you do to kind of push that message forward to keep the California Republican Party alive?
Well, first and foremost, my priorities are the state of California, the 12th Senate District, and then the Republican Party.
I understand.
And so that's the message that I say to my district, and I think that resonates with them. I fight for the issues that are important to them. And that's worked well for me, and quite frankly, that's what I was elected for. I wasn't elected to be a partisan. I was elected to represent the district, and I think that comes across great. And so the message, I work on things traditionally that other Republicans don't work on. I voted for the DREAM Act. I voted for the driver's license bill for what are called the Dreamers.
Right.
So I've tried to be a better representative for my district.
Did you get chastised for that within your party?
I really didn't actually. I was I had a few folks that sent me notes that they weren't happy with it.
But the party apparatus, they understood that was a vote of conscience and that was your choice.
Yeah, and I think they understand that, again, I'm not there to represent them. I'm there to represent my district, and I make that clear, and they may not like that. In the past, I've had members from more conservative districts that jokingly give me a hard time. I say, hey, I don't represent your district. I represent my district, and my district has specific needs. My district is 65% Hispanic. We have high unemployment. We have high poverty. So, of course, I'm going to look at the things that I think deals with that.
So how are you doing it? I mean, to win in a district that's 65% Hispanic as a Republican, I mean, what's the secret sauce here?
Well, again, I work very hard, first of all. I go to, when I was campaigning, I was out everywhere. I do everything. And I try to articulate the views. You'll never see me get stirred up on partisan issues. I just won't do it. No, there's certain things I believe in and I'll advocate for, but it's always in a way where I respect the other person's view. It's not, I think a lot of what happens in politics is theater. People, bang their gongs and they shout and they get upset. And it's really for theater. And I just don't engage in that. And so I think people look at me as a person that's open-minded, and I'm pretty level-headed, and I think that they like that.
Have you already started working with Democrats in the state Senate on issues in which you can compromise?
Yeah, well, make no mistake. Yeah, we're down to 11, but before that we were 15. We still couldn't do anything without Democrats.
Now, two-thirds.
Yeah, it's a two-thirds, and I don't know if I would be shocked if all my Democratic colleagues want to rush out and put taxes or vote for taxes. I think that would be difficult. But yes, of course, I work very closely with Michael Rubio, Senator Kathleen Galgiani.
Okay. And I want to speak with you about Proposition 30. Yeah. That was the tax initiative that passed in November. First tax initiative to pass in 8 years in California. Increases taxes on the wealthy, increases sales tax. Were you surprised it passed? Because I was shocked.
Honestly, I was. I felt that the people I talked to were saying, look, you haven't got your house in order. Why are you asking for more money? But I think this shows how popular the governor is and how hard the governor works, because I believe this was sold squarely because of the governor. It was his efforts.
And it was a big victory, over 55%. That being said, the Republicans, at least a few of you, Assemblyman Jeff Gorell, Senator Anthony Cannella, are looking towards Prop 30 as a way to guarantee certain funding levels for education, specifically higher ed. Talk to me about your proposal.
Yeah, so I believe one of the reasons that this bill passed was because the college students came out en masse. Not only the college students, but the parents saying, look, we can't afford 20% increases anymore. So I believe that this was sold to them as a way to control the tuition increase. And really, the proposition didn't do that. The rhetoric was there, said they were going to do that, but there's really no teeth in that to do that. So,
well, there's, as I've said before, there's no lockbox.
It's no lockbox.
And
it's a lockbox to collect $45 billion in new taxes. That's really the only guarantee, and to fund realignment.
Do you want to create a lockbox? Because there are pluses and minuses to having a lockbox. I mean, there's flexibility, and then there's no flexibility. So what do you want as a legislator?
So, as I said, I believe these college students went out because they believed that it was going to lock in their tuition. So what I want to do is I want to honor that pledge.
Literally.
I want to keep the CSU and UCs over the life of this tax, this $45 billion tax, keep them from raising tuition. Now, I'm not saying they won't need additional money. I'm just saying they can't get it off the backs of the students. What they will do is come to the state of California and we'll appropriate their more money. So they come to us, explain the reason they need more money, and we'll appropriate more because, again, this is a $45 billion tax over 7 years. On the out years, we're going to have a surplus. In fact, the last year it's estimated we'll have a $6 or $7 billion surplus.
But let me ask you, look, as someone who probably will have a child at a UC or CSU in 7 years, I think that's terrific. And it feels good inside. But there is a little nervousness about setting rates firm for 7 years. That's a long time.
Is it?
It'd be, I don't know.
We're paying $45 billion in taxes over the next 7 years. So Californians are locked into more taxes for the next 7 years.
What do your friends on the Democratic side say? Because, like I said, it does feel good. And it feels like, I mean, if a Democrat proposed this, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, it feels like it could be coming from the other side of the aisle. So have you spoken with your friends?
I have. You know, I'm still working the bill, trying to get support, but they're intrigued by it because I believe most of the Democrats I serve with want to keep tuition in check. They represent middle-class Californians as well, and they understand they're getting priced out of college. When a kid starts school and it's one tuition, the next year there's a 20% increase.
It's devastating.
Yeah, it's difficult. I can tell you as a parent, I have 4 children, and my wife and I started 529 plans for each one of them. So we estimated, based on the tuition at the time, with an inflationary index. Well, it's blown that out of the water, and so we're left with a potential scenario where we can't afford college for our kids.
What if the actual bill sunsets sooner? Not 7 years, but let's say 4 years.
Well, look, I'll do whatever. We'll work it, but the out years are where all the surplus is. $7 billion the last year. I think I believe commitments were made to these students, and we should honor those commitments. And while Prop 30 is in place, again, a very large tax increase, all I'm asking for, it's probably $250 million out of a $7 billion surplus to be allocated towards the students. I think that's very reasonable, and if we don't, that money will go someplace else. There are plenty of people who want that money. We should give it to the kids.
Where do we go from here?
Well, the bill has been submitted, and now I'm starting to work it with my Democrats to try to get co-authors, and hopefully we can get the college students excited about this like they were about Prop 30, because if they get behind it, it will pass.
In terms of the budget generally, the governor has said we are in balance. Do you buy it? Are we in balance?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, I think.
Are you shocked?
Well, we just passed a $45 billion tax increase.
But
so
are we in balance because of that, or in spite of that?
No, I think we're in balance because of the tax increase. But we've got to be diligent. There will be some that want to get other programs up and running to use all the money. I'm telling you, if we don't lock in some of this money, some of this big surplus towards college tuition, it will be used for something else. We will never show a surplus because, there's just too many people that want to spend that money. So I think the bill's got a real chance, and we're going to work very hard to get it passed.
His name is Anthony Cannella, member of the California State Senate. My name is Brad Pomerance. I thank the senator for joining us on California Edition. It's California Edition. Welcome back. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Ricardo Lara, a member of the California State Senate, a new senator. We congratulate you.
Thank you.
You came over from the Assembly after 2 years. Absolutely. How is it? How's it better? How's it worse? How's it different?
Brad, it's very different.
It is.
It's the simple fact that there's 40 senators.
Right.
So you got a smaller group of folks to work with. And it's a great opportunity. It's a little different than the Assembly.
What's also interesting is it's very Democratic.
Right.
There are 29 Democrats, 11 Republicans, down 4 Republicans from the last cycle. I know you're new, but still, You look across the way, where are the Republicans? There's so few of them.
Yeah, you can see the stark difference.
Right.
And it's going to take a little used to, but again, it's the will of the voters.
So do you work with the Republicans? You don't need them for any majority or supermajority. You're a 2/3 supermajority. Do you bring them in, or you just say, look, the voters spoke, it's all, we rule the roost?
Well, I think you really have to extend that olive branch. At the end of the day, they were elected by their electorate as well.
Sure.
And so they have every right to be there and express their opinions and views. And so I think we can get more done if we work together. And that's my approach.
Let's talk about one area, for example, education. Anthony Cannella, member of the state Senate, a Republican, called a moderate by many. He has proposed a bill that would freeze tuition for UC and CSU for 7 years. He points to Prop 30, which passed a tax increase, and he wants that money dedicated to tuition. What do you think of that, for example?
I haven't seen the details of his bill yet, but I think the voters were very, very clear that we need to stabilize our tuition. And so whether it's this legislation or whether it's some other bill, we need to ensure the voters that we stabilize our education, our higher education system, which includes, freezing tuition hikes. Unfortunately, with the UCs, they're an autonomous entity, so we have to do our due diligence and work with the governor and work with our appointees to ensure that the regions adopt this policy, because I think it is important. We need to provide some certainty to our students.
You do mention the notion that the UC and CSU system acts independently, but the voters, they were really sold the notion that if you vote Prop 30, that money will go to education. Now, there's no lockbox, and some would argue that's best because you want flexibility. But how can the voters be sure that that money is going where they were told it was going? The Republicans are saying, let's lock it up.
Right. No, I think that's a great question, Brad. And I think the proof is in the pudding with our current governor's budget, which clearly delineates the funding for our not only K-12 system, but our higher education systems. We are increasing the amount we're spending per pupil in our K-12. We're stabilizing some of the cuts that we've done for the higher education system. And so I think voters are going to be able to really see the budget, in short, is the statement of our values.
At the same time, there's no doubt that the governor's budget stabilizes higher ed funding, K-12 funding, but it doesn't restore.
Right.
We had such massive cuts over the last 4 years, and I'm sure there are many forces speaking in your ear, whispering sweet nothings, saying, we helped you get a supermajority, start restoring, not stabilizing.
Well, I think first, before we even have those discussions, we need to stabilize. And I agree with the governor. I think we need to move cautiously and not squander the opportunity that voters have given us with Prop 30. So I think we need to really act judiciously and ensure that we stabilize the funding before we start implementing any more augmentations.
I think it's fair to say that 2012 was the year when the electorate as a whole really saw the power of the Latino voter. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a very fair assessment, Brad. And you've seen now the change of tone in Washington when it comes to immigration reform. And I think as our population continues to grow, and not only just grow in numbers, but grow in terms of an electorate power, you start seeing that the issues that we care about are issues that every Californian cares about.
It's interesting. I look at your state Senate seat, and you had been nested essentially with, let's call her a European American Assembly member. 20 years ago, she would never have demurred to someone of color, not because she wasn't wonderful, but it's Long Beach. It's a European white area. Yet you were the candidate that was seen as stronger because of the power of the Latino voter. How did this happen? It seemed like that, although of course it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
I think this is something that has been, a phenomenon for the past couple of years. And, it's important to understand that diversity, everything's changing. I mean, Long Beach is such a diverse community now. And so to be able now to represent this diversity is a great honor for me, but also goes to the fact that we've done our due diligence in terms of educating not only Latinos, but other ethnic groups about the importance of being civically engaged, civically minded, and voting.
And what's interesting is there are seats that are quote, white seats, and yet, for example, Chris Holt in the Assembly, an African-American, represents a very, quote, white area. You know, he gets elected. I don't know if your seat is majority Latino. I don't think it is, but
it's half.
It's half. So, I mean, there is a change. We see a changing face of the voter and who they're willing and not willing to vote for. But what about ensuring the Democratic Party's strength with Latino voters? Because 70% for President Obama, but how do you maintain those large majorities as a Democrat yourself?
Absolutely. I think, you know, the challenge now is ensuring that we talk about those issues that are important. You know, issues of, you know, the economy, how are we creating jobs for middle class families? Are we protecting students from, you know, to go to higher education and go to college? These are important issues not only to Latinos but to everybody. And as we continue, I mean, California, we're the most diverse state in the union, and so people are, you know, opening up to now not only necessarily saying that they're going to vote for, per se, a white candidate, a black candidate, Latino candidate. They're going to look for the candidate that they feel best represents their values.
But at the same time, and there's no doubt the Republicans in California have woken up. I mean, you see the minority leader on the Assembly side, Connie Conway, doing some outreach specifically to Latino communities. I mean, it's going to get competitive at some point. And so what is the party doing specifically to solidify gains?
Well, I think we got to continue, first of all, in ensuring that the party looks like California and that the party leadership, especially the party leadership, starts to look more like California. And it's something that at the Latino caucus level we've been talking about for years. It's great to include Latinos in your program and have a specific program for Latinos, but until Latinos are actually part of the party and are making key decisions.
The speaker.
Exactly. I was about to put a plug into our great speaker, who is that figurehead. And Republicans need to do the same. You see that, you know, the majority of that party leadership doesn't look like California. So they have to do their soul searching.
I mean, I've said that before. In fact, I was speaking with Kurt Hagman, one of your former colleagues, and I said to him, I said, the Republican members of the legislature look like me. And he said, but wait a second, a lot of our candidates were diverse, but they were not successful. And so it is interesting that the Republican Party, they've made efforts in California, but they just took a drubbing. Do you think they're getting injured by the noise of the national discussion, self-deportation? You can get pregnant when you're, you know, you can stop a pregnancy if you're raped. And
I think absolutely. I think they're the victims of what's going on at the national level. But also, quite frankly, I don't think the Republican Party here in California has done enough to actually court Latinos. It's nice to put up a candidate, but if that candidate doesn't have the views of the community or doesn't have the intentions to actually really talk to Latinos and engage Latinos, it doesn't matter who the person is. At the end of the day, you're going to have to engage the voter.
His name is Ricardo Lara. He is a member of the California State Senate. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you for watching California Edition.